Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of DC Comics comes a film featuring one of the most popular superheroes of all time, a shadowy figure patrolling the streets of a corrupt city, seeking to protect its citizens from crime, giving them a chance to avoid the tremendous loss he faces every day. We're talking about Batman 1989. Batman the movie, also known as Batman 1989, was directed by Tim Burton from a story by Sam Hamm and was released in the United States on June 23, 1989. It was produced by John Peters and Peter Gruber and was distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. The movie features characters created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane appearing in DC Comics. Batman debuted in Detective Comics number 27 on March 30, 1939. The story focuses on Bruce Wayne, a billionaire industrialist living in Gotham City. After witnessing the murder of his parents as a child in Crime Alley, Bruce dedicates his life to avenging their loss and becomes the masked vigilante known as Batman. As Gotham's mayor prepares to celebrate the city's bicentennial, a gangster rises through the ranks of the mob and after a confrontation with Batman, becomes a fiendish criminal known as the Joker. The Joker, fascinated with reporter Vicky Vale, inevitably targets Bruce Wayne, which leads to a showdown between the Dark Knight detective and the Clown Prince of Crime at the end of the movie. Batman was a box office smash, earning over $411 million on a budget of $48 million. It was also a hit with critics, many of whom praise it for its dark entertainment. The film spawned 3 sequels and eventually led Warner Brothers to 3 different character reboots years later. Thanks to its visuals, over-the-top characters, and overall story, Batman remains a classic comic book film and is credited for introducing the genre to modern cinema, which continues to enjoy the characters and movies to this day. And that's the lowdown on Batman 1989. You hear talk sometimes about the greatest films of all time, and more specifically, you have some folks who say, well, this is the perfect movie. Now, keep in mind, kids, the word perfect can be very subjective. What looks good to you may not look good to the guy next to you, and what you love, the girl next to you may hate. That's just how it is. So I don't know if there is such a thing as a perfect movie, maybe to you, maybe not to the guy beside of you. Again, it's all subjective. As comic book fans, over the past 12, 13 plus years, we have been inundated with the Marvel Universe. And if you are a comic book fan, growing up reading Marvel, as I have, as Phil has, as a lot of other people out there have, you have been just giddy like a schoolgirl from the MCU, man, because this company tends to leave their fans happy. They send them home happy, as they say in pro wrestling. Give them what they want, send them home happy. MCU typically does that. I can look back at movies and say, look, in my opinion, Black Panther is a perfect movie. Now that's my call. Someone else next to me may say, I liked it. Wasn't the best movie I've ever seen. So on and so forth. But again, with something as specific as niche, possibly, can you still call comic movies niche in this day and age, man? I don't know if you can or not, because to me, they appeal to the masses, not just the general comic book fans at large. But again, in terms of the perfect film, yeah, for this category, I think you can, depending on, again, where your opinion falls, what you grew up reading, what you enjoy reading today, perhaps who your favorite characters are. Maybe you can look at this and say, hey, it's a perfect film. I don't know if I would say that Batman 1989 is a perfect movie. And I'm calling it that, and specifically for this episode, because we've covered The Dark Knight here on the 6M before. And so I can't just title this thing simply Batman. We've already done that. So yeah, this episode is Batman 1989. Again, Phil, I don't know if I would call this the perfect movie, but in 1989, when we had basically a whole bunch of nothing happening from Marvel or anyone else, this was pretty darn awesome. And I remember when this came out, I was a teenager and I couldn't wait. Me and a friend of mine we were scrapping and clipping and doing everything we could. No internet happening for me at that time. And it was, let's see what we were trying to get our hands on comic book magazines. A Wizard was a thing, I believe, in '89. So yeah, anything we could get, press releases, Entertainment Tonight, anywhere we could get information, we were trying to get it. But this movie for me at the time was awesome. I watched it again for the first time 2 days ago in preparation for this. Haven't seen it in a while, but I'm sitting there, Phil, watching this on my couch, and I am repeating the dialogue with the film because I've seen it so many times. So, Batman 1989, how long had it been since you've seen this film, and does it hold up for you now?
Uh, Man, I haven't seen it in a long, long time. This is a movie I used to watch a ton of times. I can't remember if I used to have it on VHS, but I know for sure the first time I saw it was on VHS.
Right. Same here. I had it on VHS and I later got it on DVD. I think I own every version except the audiobook, to be honest. Um, does it hold up for you? I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, right? Because we've had 13 years of the MCU, but you don't necessarily have to compare and contrast. We can do that as we get into this. But does it hold up for you in terms of not just being a comic book film, but being a film? How does it feel to you watching after a while?
um, I think it still holds up. I think there's certain things visually where it looks dated, but of course, this movie was made almost 30 years ago at this point. Like this was '89. Some of the visuals, like some of the special effects, look kind of hokey, but it's just that was just a time period.
Yeah, it was. And for anybody that was around during that time, I guess one tidbit that kind of started floating around was the rumor that Michael Keaton was going to be the Dark Knight detective. Um, I'm a Michael Keaton fan. I am today, and I was then, and I was in between. But when I heard the news, Phil, I said, "Michael Keaton, are you freaking serious?" Like, I don't know who I expected or what I expected, but I didn't expect the comedic actor Michael Keaton, who at that point in time had done Clean and Sober, I think was his only dramatic role to date. And I mean, this was Mr. Mom, this was Night Shift, this was Beetlejuice. This is Michael Keaton, man. He's a comedian, stand-up comedian. I mean, he becomes an actor after the fact. I mean, dude, I don't know what I expected again, Phil, but I didn't expect Michael Keaton. Um, but fast forward now, years after this movie, I don't know who else could have done the job that he did. Um, Talk to me about Michael Keaton in this role. Did you think, all right, do you still think he's the right choice? Do you think it could have went a different way, or do you think that this was Keaton's role to have?
Um, I thought he did a great job on the role. At the time, I still think that in terms of live action Batman, um, I think he does one of the best jobs of being a believable Bruce Wayne and a Batman. Um, because I feel like some other guys don't do it as well. I mean, George Clooney, although he was in a terrible movie, I feel like he is a
Yes.
good Bruce Wayne. I feel like his Batman is it's all right, but Val Kilmer's the same. I think Val Kilmer is a good Bruce Wayne. Batman, I don't know. I think that Keaton does the best of both roles.
I agree with that actually, and a couple things to note here. Keaton wore a hairpiece for the movie, which I'm totally fine with that. I didn't lose any sleep over that. And in the Batman costume, he wore a fake chin because he doesn't have a square chin. You can look at him and see he doesn't have a square chin, but in the Batman suit, he does. Dude, before we dive into this, talk to me about the suit. What's your impressions of the suit? Looking through today's lens of comic book costumes on the big screen, I mean, obviously, later this year, depending, kids, on when we release this and when you choose to listen to this, in the fall of 2022, you're going to get the new Flash movie. And yes, Michael Keaton reprises his role as the Dark Knight. We don't know what the costume is going to look like, Phil. We assume it'll be a variation of this one, perhaps. Um, what's your impression of the costume looking through it in today's eyes? What do you think?
You can't discount just how what the movie suit did for Batman at the time. I thought it looked great at the time. Of course, we've had better versions where guys can actually move their neck. Um,
Yes.
but I mean, as far as the way the suit looked in all black, I mean, 'cause this was kind of first. Well, not kind of. It was the first time we saw Batman in all black. Just the way the body armor looked, it didn't look like just cloth. I thought it looked great at the time, and like I said, you can't discount the influence that it's had on Batman's costume and other medium since.
No doubt about it. And, we're not going to get much into the other two films here, or several films, I should say. But I remember in part two, was it Catwoman or was it, oh, maybe I'm thinking of the other version, with Val Kilmer, where the woman in the scene calls it black rubber. Was that the Kilmer movie
I
that it's
think that was
called
the
that?
Kilmer movie.
And I'm thinking, did we really just call this black rubber on the screen? Like, to me, that was a killer because I'm like, dude, that completely destroys the illusion of, well, that's not rubber, that's body armor. So, I mean, not that he didn't destroy the illusion by tearing the cowl off in part two and it ripped apart very easily for him. I mean, that right there said, oh, that's rubber after all. Okay. So, as with a lot of this stuff, Phil, it's not necessarily what you're looking at that is the undoing, it's how they deal with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you. I love the suit, by the way. What's your impressions of the utility belt? Was it enough? Looking back at the 60s Batman where the thing had all these gadgets on it, and even in the comics, all these gadgets, it was very minimal in this movie for sure.
Yeah, it is very minimal, but I think it works with the suit. I think the way that Tim Burton stylized the suit and the belt and everything, and all the way all of his gadgets look uniform is one of my favorite things about the movie.
Right director for this movie, you think?
Oh, for sure. I think he handles all of the dark stuff very well. You know, despite anything you could say about how dated the movie looks or how dated the suit looks, I think the way that he shoots Batman when he's on screen and the way that the shadows are look on his suit and the way he looks in dark scenes is perfect. Um, I think the way Gotham looks is perfect. I think that bar none, the this depiction of Batman and Gotham is probably better than anything we got in the Nolan movies because it actually looks like Gotham. It doesn't look like a real city. That's one of my few gripes with the Nolan movies is I can look at it and go, no, 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 that's downtown Chicago. I live here. I know what that looks like.
Right. Right. Of course. You're right. It does. And dude, is it just me or is there smoke everywhere in this city?
Yeah, look, that's what I love about Gotham in this movie is the city has its own character. It's so grungy.
Yes.
It has like almost its own texture. It's like it looks like it doesn't look like a real city. It looks like something right out of a painting. And I love that about it.
Mm. And it's got that Art Deco style. The men are wearing fedoras and trench coats. The women are wearing bonnets and long dresses and
Yes.
overcoats. And
Yeah. I really like that about this movie. I really like that about Tim Burton's movies in general. I mean, I know some people have, kind of lampooned his movies a little bit over the last few years, but the thing that you can't deny about his style choices is he always has a good color palette, and he always approaches movies and set design in ways that people don't really do it in modern filmmaking anymore. I mean,
mm,
when you look at like some of those scenes, like the Acme factory and like some of those long shots of the city, um, it looks great. Like I said, it looks like a painting. It doesn't look like hey, let's go to a city and that's our budget. Like that's our set design budget.
right. And plus, the city feels pretty tame during the day, and then at night it's lit up. It never feels like the city is asleep. It feels like it's breathing all the time, 24/7. I guess, how you would visualize New York City never going to sleep, right? Like that. It's Gotham, except the architecture is different. Again, there's smoke everywhere. I mean, the style and the fashion. I mean, this is another conversation. We did the Batman episode, but Bob Kane and Bill Finger chose to create Gotham City instead of using New York. Um, I love that choice, by the way. I think it was absolutely the right thing to do because you can create things around him that don't exist in real life. So I'm with you. I think the city definitely has its own personality. It is the best depiction of Gotham in any of the Batman movies, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
what about the show? We don't have to get off on a tangent here, but compared to the show that's appropriately titled Gotham, how do you think that holds up? Do you think that did a fairly good job at portraying the city, or does this movie just squash it?
I think that this squashed it, but I'm also kind of biased because I've probably watched maybe 1 or 2 episodes of Gotham at best.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think this is the best. I mean, the crazy thing is, even if you look at the Schumacher movies, Gotham has its own character in those movies as well. I don't really like all of the neon lights and the gigantic naked men statues. Those movies give Gotham its own kind of appeal and look.
Oh yeah, yeah. Saying Schumacher's name in reference to Batman's kind of blasphemy at this point. But no, I get you. Gotham, dude, I held on for the first season for like 2/3 of the first season, and I'm a big fan of Ben McKenzie. I've always enjoyed his work, and I like Donald Logue, who's in it, and I like certain guys and actresses in it and everything. But like, I don't know, it wasn't. I'm not saying it wasn't moving fast enough, but Alfred was a different portrayal, which was weird for me. He was kind of a jerk to Bruce growing up, and I'm like, this is your Alfred? Like I bumped into that pretty hard. So maybe one day I'll go back and, binge it and give it a chance. I don't know. This movie's dark. I remember a friend of mine at the time complaining that he couldn't see anything. I couldn't tell what was happening in the fight scenes. It's too dark. And I'm like, dude, it's Batman. What's supposed to happen here? Like, hoy, I don't know. So we talked a lot about Frank Miller in the Batman episode. The Dark Knight Returns was in '86. A year later, he does Batman Year One, and then in '89, here comes the film. With this goes without saying, Phil, but without those two books, do you get quite this film, or how much of this is Tim Burton? How much of it is Burton plus what Frank Miller did before him?
um, it's an interesting question because I do think that there's some things that Nolan does take from Burton. It's not a lot, um, but I do think some of the style choices, like making sure that Batman stays cloaked in black. We've yet to see the gray and black costume
Mm.
in a live action movie, which I'm a big fan of the gray and black. But yeah, I just think movie wise, just the all black works, and that's absolutely a note that they took from Tim Burton.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, um, again, we gave Frank Miller his props, and he deserves them because he sort of laid the foundation for what was going to come after. And then, we have to reference the Batman the Animated Series, which Danny Elfman's doing all the comic book music at this time. And dude, we've got to talk about Elfman before we dive in here. I'm trying to hit all the sort of the high points here, dude. That music as the movie opens takes me back, and I love it so much. The score is wonderful. Prince does the soundtrack. What? It's kooky, it's goofball in parts, and I freaking love it. I had the cassette tape of that soundtrack, and I destroyed it because I wore it out, and I think that the tape player actually ate it because I'd played it so freaking much. But man, Danny Elfman and Prince together on this film, dude, that is quite the combination. Talk to me about the sound of this movie and how important it is, and does that hold up after all these years as well?
Yeah, I think that the sound holds up more than anything in this movie. I feel like the Elfman theme is timeless. Um, I feel like you could take that out of this movie and put it anywhere, and it's easily recognizable. And I mean, Prince is Prince. Like, it just
Mm.
Prince is one of the greatest musicians ever. Um, I mean, there's certain stuff in this movie that isn't the same without Prince on the soundtrack. I say all the time, as good as Heath Ledger is as Joker, not much tops the party man scene of Joker walking into the museum and vandalizing it with the party man in the background. Man, I don't care how many times I watch this movie. There's just something about the end credits rolling and Scandalous over it.
Oh,
It's just great.
it's awesome. And him on the parade float when Trust is playing real loud.
Yes.
That's great. I love that bit in the museum because it stands out. I don't know if if you catch this or not. You can hear their footsteps as they're walking and dancing through there. They added those sounds. And at first you're like, why don't they just let the music play? But then I kind of liked it because it felt like these are grown men following this freak around who's, maniacal and insane at this point. And they've got this, they're choreographed and they're going through there. And this is the most ridiculous thing you could ever see. But I kind of liked it because it felt like, well, this is supposed to be ridiculous. These guys are going through the motions of this because he's the boss and because they have to work for him or they're working for him. And it felt real, for lack of a better word. Just me hearing the footsteps for some reason did it for me. I'm like, okay, this is the goofiest thing ever, but it kind of works at the same time. So,
Yeah, man,
which is funny.
I cannot say enough how much I love the museum scene. I just love it. Every time I think about that movie, it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's just something about it. Just I think in those scenes, I think that Jack nails Joker. Like I don't think that you can get a better interpretation of Joker in this movie. I mean, of course, in like the final act as well. But it's just something about that museum scene that just always stands out to me.
Oh yeah, it's so good. We've talked about Keaton, obviously, who is the man himself, the Cape Crusader, and I think he proves why he was the right choice for this. This is not the Batman, kids, that you may have grown up with. This is not the Batman that you got from Frank Miller. This is a different kind of Batman. This Batman is not the world's greatest detective. He's not the world's best martial artist. That's not to say he's not capable, but he's not. I don't know, Phil, if I would describe this version of Batman as the best anything. This feels like he can fight, he can throw a punch, he knows some kicks, and he's got the tech. Um, you know, he knows his way around a computer system, obviously. But to me, in my opinion, that's kind of where it stops. I mean, this is not exactly the Sherlock Holmes depiction of Batman that we've always wanted. And I also don't think this is, like the scientist or the UFC fighter either. This is just a guy who feels called to do something and who's using his money to make it happen, which is not a bad thing. But have we got quite this portrayal of Batman in terms of this version of the guy in other films so far?
I don't think so. I think that his Batman is pretty different than the Nolan Batman. I think the Schumacher Batman is just in a realm of its own. It's just so campy and cheesy for other reasons. Yeah, I think that his Batman definitely stands out. Like I feel like he relies pretty heavily on the gadgets. He doesn't necessarily do the detective stuff that you would expect. He's not out here having these, long drawn out fight scenes either. Um, but he still feels capable. You still get the feeling that this is Batman when you look at it.
Yeah, for sure. It's maybe it's an well, not maybe. It is an Elseworlds Batman because we'll find out in the Flash movie. So I'm really looking forward to that movie, if only for Keaton, just as a sidebar. Um,
Yeah,
we'll see how they handle it.
I'm very interested to see what they're gonna do with that.
Yeah. Um, let's talk about the man himself, Clown Prince of Crime, Jack Nicholson. Contrary to popular belief, kids, Willem Dafoe was not tapped to play the Joker, as urban legend has suggested, and that he was approached. He was, however, according to sources online, kids, was approached to play Batman early in the process, and it didn't come through. But there again, the studio wanted, let's see, Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Mel Gibson, Tom Selleck, even Bill Murray's name is there. And I'm thinking, you want Bill Murray as Batman? Like, you couldn't get Bill Murray to commit to another Ghostbusters film until 25, 30 years after part two. Like, come on. So I don't know if that would have worked. Harrison Ford, Dennis Quaid. I mean, a who's who of actors of that time. But, for the Joker, man, and you and I talked about this in the Batman episode. I happen to agree. I think Mark Hamill is the best depiction of the Joker that we've gotten to this point. But if you're talking to me about an actor in physical form, Heath Ledger was great. I personally am, does my Joker need to have a razor blade and be cutting people up? I don't know. Time and place for it, I guess. But this is the fun-loving Joker that you probably could have put in the '60s show. I mean, minus the murder stuff. I loved him. I thought he was awesome in this. Of course. What more can you say about this? Why is Nicholson the perfect guy to play the Joker?
I think besides the fact that Nicholson really committed to the role, and he committed to some of the kookiness of the character. He just feels closer to the character because he does all of the stuff that you would expect from the comic book. He does the laughing gas. He does the acid spewing flowers. He has all of the gags like the buzzers, and it doesn't feel like it needs to be that he's just a serial killer. I mean, of course he is, but like I also want all of the comic booky stuff as well.
Does a comic book film, I think I know the answer to this, does a comic book film need that sort of over the top, maybe a little campy, a little outlandish, or does it just villain, or does it just depend on the source material and what we're talking about?
I think it depends on the source material, but I think that man, they go back to they go back to what we both know and love in wrestling. If you're gonna reference a guy and we know a name, we need to see the finishers. We need to see the signature moves, right? And so
Right.
if we get a Green Goblin in a movie and we never see him use a pumpkin bomb, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Very, very good. Yeah.
And I mean, that's not to say that again, I don't like Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger's great in a role, but there's something about the first time we see him use like the flower, or the fact that he mutilates people's faces and makes them, and they have these big smiles like his, and it's not him carving smiles into people's faces. It's just comic booky science. I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Of course. Yeah. And some of it's got to be a little bit out there. I mean, if again, kids, go back in the archives, listen to the Batman episode because you're going to get some good stuff. Because we talk a lot about this, and also in the Batman Year One, the fact that there's this need to put Batman in the real world and make it gritty and dark and bloody and everything's on fire and he kills people. But you don't need to do that because that's not really Batman. And I think this movie proves, hey, you can do that and it can make a bunch of money and it doesn't have to be Batman because this can be Batman too. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, if you could say anything about this movie, I just would say the style choices that Tim Burton used. I mean, they're there. I mean, the way the Batmobile looks in this movie, the first time we see it, it's iconic. The way that the jet looks, the way that suits look, the way that Wayne Manor looks. It's all very much unique and distinct. It doesn't look like you could just see that in any movie.
Oh yeah. Look, dude, I'm looking at the cast list here, and the choices or supposed names that were thrown around. Let's say Nicholson doesn't do it. Here's your choices, Phil. I'm gonna put you on the spot, and these are good, by the way. These are really good. I'm gonna give you the best, dude. And for me, these are winners. Okay, Tim Curry,
Mm. Hmm.
David Bowie, dude. That raises the hair on the back of my neck. I love David Bowie, man. John Lithgow, um, Ray Liotta, James Woods, and of course the guy who really, really wanted the part, Robin Williams. I mean, if Nicholson doesn't work out, and those are your choices, and you're the guy doing the casting, who are you casting as Joker?
Uh, it's weird because I do think that in makeup, Robin Williams would have been great. But can I picture Robin Williams doing like the Jack Napier stuff early in the movie? I don't know. And I think that's a part of why Jack Nicholson works so much, because I feel like he's believable early in the movie before he makes his transformation. Um, but there are some good choices there. There are some very interesting what ifs. I think, man, it's tough to not say Robin Williams because I think he would have nailed it in makeup.
Another name that I didn't give you is John Glover, who actually is portrayed Lionel Luthor on the Smallville series. And dude, John Glover has got the face for it. He's got the acting chops. But at the time, they said no because they wanted a name, like a big name. But I'm like, dude, if you'd went with John Glover, holy God. Crispin Glover to me was always an interesting choice, especially after The Killing Joke, because he looked like Crispin Glover from the Back to the Future movie in the 1950s flashback scenes. And I thought, hey, Crispin Glover's kind of kooky and, a little off his rocker. Why don't we just have this guy be the Joker? But yeah.
Yeah, Crispin Glover was always thrown around a lot. Yeah, I can see it. Um,
It's an interesting what if.
there's a lot of interesting what ifs. Like that is interesting to think David Bowie could have been in a Batman movie. Like that's in
Ooh.
the '80s. That'd have been wild.
And it seemed like he really, really wanted the legitimacy of becoming an actor. And maybe I'm dead wrong and he just did it because he had fun. But I mean, this picture is successful and it works. Who's to say you kill the Joker off in the end? Maybe you don't. Maybe he's back for part two. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I love Bowie though. I'm biased. So, Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale. I want you to tell me, Phil, even though we both love this flick, right? Explain to me why. I was going to say why we need Vicky Vale. I don't mean it that way. There's moments of this film where, to me personally, I'm asking what, God, I'm going to say, what is she doing here? And that sounds like, ugh. I think Kim Basinger is fine. There's no issue with me at all. But sometimes there's moments where I'm like, is it so Joker can hit on her? Because I love the stuff in the museum with her and him. It's freaking great. And he's got a thing for her and he's maniacal. Um, is she the right kind of damsel in distress? Should she have been stronger? What do you think about the character of Vicky Vale here?
Um, I like her in the role. Especially early on in the movie when she shows up. And she meets with the reporter, which I am drawing a blank on his name. I keep wanting to call him Arliss. That is not his name.
Alexander Knox.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, yeah, she's good. And I don't know if it's so much that I'm just so used to the movie and I've seen it so many times that I can't imagine it
Mm.
without her.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think she's fine in the role. Do I think that um Michelle Pfeiffer is just that much better in the next movie? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally agree with that. I don't bump into her at all. But watching it again and again now, Phil, I'm a bit jaded because I've had some amazing Marvel films since this movie came out, and I've seen chemistry between great actors and great stories, and I continue to watch moments in those Marvel films that bring tears to my eyes. So they've moved me in a lot of different ways, and then I go back and watch this film, and I'm like, God, do I feel chemistry? Do I feel now? I think that she and Keaton did have chemistry on the film. I do feel it. Do I feel it enough? Whew, I don't know, but that's me overthinking it, dude. I tend to overthink this stuff. But you know, at the time, could you have put someone else in the role? Sure, we wouldn't have known the difference, obviously. But I'm with you. I think she does fine in the part. Alexander Knox, Robert Wool, another comedic actor. Um, this I'm going to flat out say, in my opinion, no disrespect to Robert Wool, this could have been anybody. Now I know he has some great one-liners, but even his one-liners felt hokey and dated. Even for '89, they felt dated. Um, but I don't know, dude. You know, to me personally, I bump into this one, and I like him as an actor, but I bump into this character. I kind of feel like this could have been anybody else, and it probably wouldn't have done much for me anyway. What do you think about the character of Knox? And plus, didn't they create this character for the film? Did he come from the books?
I think that he was created for the movie. Yeah, I think that he is. Um, yeah, I don't mind the Knox character. I think he's fine for what he is. I think if he was in a movie maybe like 2 minutes longer than he was, I would probably get tired of him. But I thought he was
Right.
fine as just like a throwaway side character.
I liked it when he walks in because newspapers are still a thing in '89. Kids, they're a big deal. But they're on him about the Batman story, and someone hands him a drawing of a bat in a suit, and you can see Bob Kane's name signed at the bottom of the illustration. I guess is an homage to Bob Kane. But yeah, I don't hate the guy or the character, but I just it didn't really do much for me then as a kid, and it doesn't do much for me now. But that's a me thing. I'm not crazy about it. Um, Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon. Now, this is not the grandfatherly type that we got um, with Alfred in the film, and it's sure not the well-spoken, slick-back hair version of Commissioner Gordon from the Batman '60s TV show, who we both kind of agreed kind of sounded a little British when he spoke. This feels like your friendly uncle, who probably has a nice hunting rifle collection in his study. I like Pat Hingle a lot, and I've seen him in a lot of stuff. Looking back through now, what we know about what can be done with Commissioner Gordon, I would say, nah. At the time, however, if you wanted a veteran actor to be Gordon, this guy's fine. What do you think about Gordon? Was there enough done with him in this movie, or is it just the right amount considering what we're talking about here?
I think in retrospect, when you look at how good Nolan handled Gordon, he's not nearly as good. I feel like, which I mean, it's tough to go up against, that version, and the actor that plays him in that movie is just night and day. Um,
Mm,
but I think that he is fine in this movie. I don't think that he is bad. I don't think that he does anything that's just like, oh, Commissioner Gordon would never do that. So it's
right.
serviceable. It's probably the best thing I could say. But that's like, if you don't know that much about Commissioner Gordon, would it really bother you? Probably not.
Yeah, I do like the actor. I've seen him in many, many things over the years. This guy worked. I mean, I think he had a career in Hollywood for like 100 years. This guy did. I mean, he was in everything, man. It seemed like he popped up all the time and all kinds of different stuff. Um, of course, in Christopher Nolan's trilogy, it was Gary Oldman, who physically looks like Gordon from Batman Year One. I mean, just like him, actually. Scary how much he looks like him. Um, but yeah, again, kids, Pat Hingle as Gordon. I'm fine with it. Um, Here's a choice that we didn't even get the tip of the iceberg, Phil, with Billy D. Not even the tip of the iceberg. Um, the idea of an African American Harvey Dent is so appealing on so many different levels, and we don't have to do a massive deep dive here, but the idea that he's black, but half of his face is there. Dude, there's a whole other commentary you can do with that. There's a deep dive you can do on it now in this day and age, and go other directions with it. And not only that, Phil, but this guy can act in anything. He's great. And he looks great in a suit. He had the stogie, the cigar, and he just well dressed, well spoken. Great choice for, what would later become Two Face, but we never saw it. I mean, dude, not even the tip of the iceberg with Billy D as Harvey Dent. What do you think about this part in this movie?
Um, Man, you're right. I would have loved to have seen more of him after the first two movies. I thought he was good in the scenes that we saw him in. Um, but yeah, just, man, the potential of seeing him play Two Face, that would have been interesting. It kind of sucks that we didn't get it, but we didn't get a lot of things in the third Batman movie because people didn't like how violent Batman Returns was.
Mm, yeah, good point. Um, Yeah, I love this guy, and of course we got him. We got his return in the Star Wars universe, which was pretty cool. Um, I would love to have seen what they could have done here. Would it have been too much to do the acid scene in the courtroom and all that? I mean, well, you think there might have been a way to shoehorn that into the script, or do you think it would have been too much for this one movie?
don't think this movie really needed it.
I mean, acid does it to him. So what about acid from the Joker's flower? They could have worked that in easily.
They could have, yeah, that's true.
I don't know. Of course, that acid from Joker's flower, melted the bolts on the church bell. So maybe on a man's face, it kills him on impact. I don't know. So maybe not such a good idea after all. Michael Gow as Alfred Pennyworth. Now, this guy feels like your grandfather, but he's prim, he's proper, educated, a man of the world, kind of, but also very down to earth, easy to talk to. I loved him as Alfred. I mean, we got Michael Caine later, Jeremy Irons, of course. I mean, we've got other versions of Alfred to look at and point to, but man, I love this guy. Talk about Alfred in this movie.
Yeah, I think that he was the most consistent from the Burton movies on to the Shoemaker movies. He was the most consistent member of the cast. He was always good. He always brought like some a regalness to the role. He's great. Yeah, I feel like I've seen him in other things, and he also was great. Isn't he the first Dumbledore, right?
Yes.
Before he passed away, and they had to recast it.
I think you're right. Is that right? We might be thinking of someone else. You could be right. I'm not sure. I'm not a big Lord of the Rings guy.
Yeah, no, it's it's Harry Potter.
Oh, is it? See, well, there you go. I'm not a big Harry Potter guy.
Yeah, I cannot remember. I know that he's in something else.
He's appeared in Doctor Who. Dude, there's one franchise I've never given a legitimate chance to get into. I've just never committed to any of the Doctor Who's. One of these days, maybe I shall. Let's see. His first role was as Sir Arthur Holmwood in Dracula. He appeared in Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow.
He was in that, which is a very creepy movie.
I'm going to be honest with you. Shocker. I don't think I've ever seen it, to be honest with you.
Oh, it's not a bad movie.
Yeah, I might check it out. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. Jack, listen, maybe we can cut a deal. Like the whole time Jack Palance is talking, he just sounds like he's out of breath. All the time. Like, this was the actor, man. Jack Palance had so many roles where just, he could ham it up. But, dude, he hammed it up in such a way in this movie that he was legit scary in some parts. Because you could just, he came off like, I command an army. I can have your throat slit in the middle of the night. You wouldn't even know you're dead. These guys will do anything I tell them to. He's that sort of evil to me. Like, he's got that smile, but, dude, you can't trust his face at all. Jack Palance is great as Carl Grissom. I love it.
Yeah, he does have that voice where he's a great character actor, man. He does have that voice where it just sounds like he's out of breath, but he's never running in the room. He just walks in the room and it's like, yeah, all the time. And of course, we know him also from the City Slickers franchise. So gotta love it. Yeah, he was great. We lost him actually in 2006. Has it been that long? Wow. Hard to believe. Yeah, he was Curly Washburn in City Slickers, and then later played his own twin brother. Jack Palance is great. The dynamic between he and Jack Napier, which kids at the time, the Joker didn't have a name. I still don't think the characters ever really had a legitimate name. A Jack Napier is a joke. It's like I don't know if it's an old English word for a joke or if it's a word that's not used much anymore. So they just took the word Jack Napier and just split it up. And that's why the Joker is Jack Napier in this movie. So there you go. Jerry Hall as Alicia. Jerry Hall was a model. And at the time I knew her from being either the wife or the girlfriend of Mick Jagger.
I think it's girlfriend. Alicia's just kind of here for me. I don't really have a problem with it, but she doesn't do much for me personally. Who does do something for me though, Phil, is Tracy Walter as Bob the Goon. I love this guy so much. This guy had a massive career in Hollywood, worked all the time and did a bunch of stuff and a bunch of different things. I mean, dude, Bob the Goon. How do you have the Joker in Batman '89 without Bob the Goon? I love him.
He's just great as Joker's number one guy. I mean, a
Yes.
good part of what makes this role so iconic, and just the imagery of him walking around with like this colorful purple suit on, and he's got all his other goons behind him with the with the leather jackets and the shades, and they all dressed the same. Hilarious.
Right. And they got a Joker patch on their sleeve from
Yes.
the comic book.
Yes. It's hilarious. They all have their Joker bomber jackets. It's funny.
Who took where'd they get this done? Who did the artwork for
I
them?
don't know.
You know what I mean?
It's just so funny.
I want you to go downtown. I want you to tell that artist to whip up something or it's curtains for him.
Yeah.
You know, I don't
It's
know.
such an early 80s it's such a late 80s early 90s thing to have like the bad guys all have like this like uniform look, and they all, like you said,
Yeah.
they all have the patch, they all have the same jacket, they all wear shades. Some of
Yes.
them wear the berets. It just
Yes.
works, man. It just does. And Bob the Goon is the head of this group of guys that are just like, where did he even find all these guys? You got the guy that does kung fu. You got the, it's just such a random hodgepodge group of guys, man.
Yeah. And you know what? We don't see this too often in any film. His henchmen aren't too awful bad. They're not the best. They're not
They're all
stormtroopers by any
competent.
means. Yes.
The scene of him trying to get up to the top of the bell tower, he being Batman, and him having to get through these goons. Some of these goons are giving him a hard
Yes.
time.
The one guy, I think, doesn't he come down and drop kick him with both feet or something? And I'm like, holy crap, man.
Yeah,
Puts him through the floor or some nonsense. That's insane.
yeah. The one goon, like I said, the kung fu guy, he comes out with the swords. It's like, where did he find all of these guys?
Man. Do you think one of them showed up out of dress code, they get like written up or something, or Joker just shoots him? Or no, he wouldn't shoot him. Bob would shoot him, right? So, yeah. Yeah, there's so many great moments with Bob the Goon. I'm just here for Bob the Goon. That's all. Bob the Goon should have been every iteration of Batman. I'm sorry. He's the one unifying theme. So, and also Bob the Goon, not for nothing, Phil, also in City Slickers.
Yeah.
He was the cook. Cookie, I think is what they called him. So there you go. Great in that movie as well. As we said, kids, this movie has a very stylized look, very retro. This is what we come to know later with Batman the Animated Series. We become very accustomed to the hats, the fedoras, the trench coats. We've talked a lot about the cast so far. I want to go through some of the high points of the movie here, Phil, and get your take on this. One of the things that we get with Vicky is a reference that they brought back later in the new Suicide Squad film, Corto Maltese, which they've actually referenced in the Peacemaker episode. How cool is it that James Gunn went back in history and pulled the Corto Maltese reference when supposedly this fictional, I guess, South American third world country had some sort of civil war, and she was there and took these photos. How cool is it to connect the dots and bring that back for a property now and this time?
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. It's one of those Easter eggs where, it's always cool to reward fans. It's always cool to reward fans of your movies, of your franchises, and I thought this was a really cool way to do that because there was no DC universe when this movie existed. So you didn't have a way where other movies can tie in and give winks to it. So it's just cool to see it done now.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I was going to talk about Eckhart for a quick second here, but we didn't even mention the actor, William Hootkins. William Hootkins, which I'm sorry, he kind of looks like a William Hootkins, if I'm being honest. It just feels like it fits.
Yeah, every time I think about this movie, I always think about the line. Hey Eckert, think about the future.
Yeah. And that guy's voice, it's hard to do an impression because he's all the way down here. And I'm like, that's got to be dubbed. Is that him talking? Like, that can't be him talking. Because you have to like strain yourself to hear him in certain scenes. He's so far down. His register is so far down. It's crazy.
Yeah, it just
It's almost like in the Batman universe, Phil, we have to remind people, hey guys, don't forget, Gotham's a pretty corrupt city. So here's this cop he's corrupt too. Like, we have to keep doing this. But,
yeah. This
Eckhart's not just corrupt. He's flat out corrupt. He's a bad dude, man.
man, and I mean, yeah, he looks like the stereotypical um corrupt cop.
Yeah. Got a bottle of whiskey in his desk drawer. He hadn't shaved in 2 weeks. Has a bad chain smoking habit. Doesn't take care of himself. He's one ham sandwich away from having a massive coronary. And he's on the take. So all these things equal bad guy. So there you go. Yeah, he's got, and we're kind of led to believe that he and Napier have not just an association, but maybe more than that. Some history there that maybe could be explored at some point. That's interesting. He already knows that Jack is having a thing with the boss's girl, and that is Alicia, obviously, who's Grissom's girl. But unbeknownst to everybody, I think, except maybe Jack, everyone knows. But I don't know if Jack knows that everybody knows because Grissom knows as well. We find that out later. Um, but he tips off Eckhart. Yeah. So dude, and this is a regular question here on the show. I think we actually talked about this in the Batman episode, if I'm remembering correctly. We talked about the plot, how the Joker's plot is very comic bookish, and it makes perfect sense. Um, what about Grissom's idea to set up Napier to take the fall at Axis Chemicals? This guy by all rights is his best guy. It's his top lieutenant, and the best guy in the gang. I mean, it's his number two. So because he's having relations, they say, with Grissom's girl, is that enough of a reason to have Napier whacked in this movie, or do you think it was? Well, this was a dumb move. Why would this guy give up his top lieutenant? What do you think about it? Is this like typical mob movie kind of nonsense or what?
Yeah, it was believable in the sense that everybody in the underbelly of Gotham are bad people. So of course they would let something
Mm.
as trivial as he's sleeping with my girl. Like of course it's an ego thing. I'm not gonna let him get away with this.
Right. Yeah, he that's good stuff. Yeah, the whole Axis Chemicals thing. And I think in the books, wasn't it always the Acme Trading Card Company or Trading Card something? Like this massive manufacturing plant that made trading cards
Yeah, I
or
thought
like
it was
playing
Acme in the
cards.
comic, and I actually think I said Acme earlier just because I'm just used to it being Acme in the comics.
Yeah, same here. I actually forgot it was Axis till I watched the movie again. Um, yeah, that's so Axis Chemicals. And I don't know if we knew what chemicals they were doing or what they were producing. What were they producing that they would have a vat of green toxic chemicals just, lying around?
No, it's just the 80s. Chemicals are just brewed in this big vat and stirred around into waiting for somebody to fall into it.
Like a witch's cauldron. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we ever got I don't know. But for that matter, Phil, what kind of nuclear waste byproduct comes from making playing cards? So yeah, I guess they had to change it for that matter, if no other reason. Um, One of the best moments, and by the way, dude, not for nothing, but Joker has the best lines of this film. No other character, Batman included, has the best lines. I'm sure a lot of that was, hey, we got Nicholson. We got to give him some great one-liners. Dude, Nicholson has the best dialogue in this film, bar none. And the scene where he and Batman first meet in Axis Chemicals, and Batman's grabbed him, pulled him up off the floor, and he goes, Jesus! And he's looking at him. And then, of course, comes the scene where he backs off and he gives him a nod and he says, nice outfit. I mean, dude, that was in the trailer. A lot of stuff was in the trailer. man, I mean, Napier is slick. He's a bad guy, but you're kind of pulling for him. Is he too likable, you think, in certain parts of this film, or what?
No, I don't think he is. He does some pretty gruesome, horrible things in this
Ah.
movie. uh, yeah, I mean, like he saves him and then immediately turns around and shoots Eckert with the "think about the future" line. Uh, yeah, and even that part, like he would have been fine. He basically fell into the vat because of his own doing.
Very true. Yeah, because he wouldn't have been on guard and would turn around and try to shoot Batman. All right, so fine. Him shooting Eckhart wasn't a good guy move, and neither was burning up Antoine later. Um, you know, Antoine got a little hot under the collar. So yeah, that's good stuff. Um, so the Axis chemical stuff is awesome. It fits the whole Batman thing. Um, and of course we get the hand coming up out of the water. It's already white and the nails are already green. The transformation happened very quickly. He didn't drown. He didn't choke to death on the chemicals. They didn't burn his lungs up. It didn't change his voice, his eye color. I'm not saying I'm bumping into this, Phil. This is comic book science. I'm okay with that. But it was enough to dye his skin and to dye all of his hair on his body, we assume. Not just his hair, because it dyed his eyebrows as well. So, yeah. I mean, typical 80s movie thing where the hand comes up. It's like Freddy or Jason, right?
Yeah. We get that very crazy scene of him in that seedy basement surgery. He smashes the mirror.
Yes. Yes. Oh, my God. You see what I have to work with here. And you got to make the guy German or
Yeah,
something.
they
Like he's a
always have to have
butcher.
like this weird accent. I don't know why they always do that with the scientists. Like they always have to have like this Dr. Frankenstein like weird like exotic accent. It's hilarious.
Yeah. It's like some kind of the criminal underworld's doctor. It's the guy they go to patch him up. They all call him because they can't go to a real hospital for fear of being arrested. So,
Mirror. Mirror.
yeah. And of course he starts laughing because why wouldn't you laugh? I guess. When he goes back to confront Grissom, and he's astonished that Jack's alive, and of course he gives him that line, "Jack, listen, maybe we can cut a deal." And then of course he says, Jack's dead, my friend. You can call me Joker. And as you can see, I'm a lot happier. Dude, the makeup, the prosthetics. Talk to me about the face. Is it still working for you, or does it look horrible? Be honest.
I like it. I still enjoy the look. I still just enjoy the fact that he comes out and he still dresses like a mobster. He still has like the suit is purple, but it all looks in line with what he would have wore beforehand. It's just brighter. That's all. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
muted color. It's not like black and whites and grays like everybody else is wearing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is another one of those scenes where when I think Nicholson Joker, I always think of him overshooting and just turning around and shooting under his legs and shooting behind his back. Hilarious.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, and he's hoo hoo hoo, and he's laughing. He's cracking himself up. How much work? I mean, the answer is easy. Nicholson's a really good actor, but dude, he's legit having to crack himself up during the course of this movie. Um, I don't know. I've always wondered, was there something on set that like, hey, get this guy laughing? I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious, but I guess he's just enough of an actor that where he can just pull that off. But man, even some of his jokes aren't all that funny, but he's legit laughing till he's crying, which is exactly what the Joker would do. Um, we mentioned the scene with Antoine. All right, so the joy buzzer. Are you buying, Phil, the joy buzzer? This has got to be the most lethal comic book weapon we've seen in a film to date at that point. Because, man, this guy looks like he was incinerated. Wow, this is crazy. And this scene was kind of mimicked, maybe not entirely, but years later when Heath Ledger's Joker comes in and kills one of the top mobsters in the room. sort of makes a statement like, hey, you guys better listen because I'm taking over. This is my gang now. I mean, dude, very comic booky happening here. What do you think about this scene?
I mean, I think this is just a relic of the time and just what they could do with special effects. I think if now if you're watching someone get electrocuted with a joy buzzer, it probably doesn't look as crazy. Um, but I think that it fit the tone of what this Joker would do with like joy buzzers and some of his other gags.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's the massive plots as well. Another great one liner he delivers in the midst of all this is after he kills Grissom, Winged Freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me, which again made all the trailers. It was repeated in things many times over the years after that movie was released. I mean, it's classic. It's great. Again, Phil, I submit, he had the best dialogue of this entire movie, for sure. Um, in the midst of all this, Vicky and Bruce had their thing uh, out of the blue, one night stand for the Batman, right? And whereas we got the relationship between Alfred and Bruce, deep dive on it later in various different like books and movies and TV show whatnot. They kind of dismiss it here and they move on very very quickly. When she compliments Alfred as he leaves the room, and he says, "Yeah, Alfred's great. I couldn't find my socks without him," and they move on. And I'm like, that's all you got for me? Like, this guy basically raised you. Like, I'm not bumping into it, but looking at the world building they did years later and the relationship between these two guys, it kind of feels like a throwaway moment that could have been a little bit more special had he said something else besides the sock bit. Did you run into that at all when you watch this again?
I totally read this as Bruce no selling it. I totally felt this with him keeping his guard up and not letting her know how close him and Alfred are.
Ah,
It's just like early in the movie when she was like, "Hey, have you seen Bruce Wayne?" He's like, I don't know."
right. I'm not sure. Dude, you may be right about this. You have a lot more faith in this than I did, perhaps, because man, I didn't even that didn't even occur to me that his guard is up. I like that
Yeah,
though.
I mean he blatantly lies to her about going to Crime Alley later in the
Hmm.
same scene. So I always read this as he didn't want to let on how much Alfred means to him. Because Alfred was doing all this spilling and telling all this, and he's like looking around like, it's only been here one night. She don't need to know all that.
You know what? I'm going to go with your version because I like it. It's far better than mine. I'll go with that. Speaking of the Crime Alley stuff, hit me with your take on the Crime Alley stuff. This is the part for me where I'm like, this guy's not the world's greatest detective. He never knew he was being followed. The Batman that we know from the books, Bruce Wayne would know if he's being followed. This guy had no clue that Vicky Vale was tailing him in her car, and much less took photos of him in Crime Alley. What do you think about that part? And also, was the Crime Alley moment substantial enough? Did you just need to make a statement and move on, or should you have done something different there?
I thought the Crime Alley stuff was good because it was in character with stuff that you would think Bruce would do with his psychosis. And you could also make a case that he came later and moments later, and he's watching Joker kill the guy with the pin with the feather,
Right.
and he's just like walking almost in this trance, and he gets like almost shot. He gets grazed by a bullet, and he doesn't even flinch. And then he like looks off, and Vicky tried to tap him on the shoulder, and he doesn't react. He just walks away. And I think that um, whether it was intentional or not, I think it was a good view of who Bruce Wayne is as a character outside the mask. That he's in his own head a lot.
Yeah, I'll take that. Again, this is not the definitive version of Batman. This is a version of Batman. And the highly trained, highly skilled Batman that we know from the books, this is not that guy. So I'm trying to keep that in mind as we talk about this film. It's easier in some moments than others because I do tend to contrast and compare. Um, so the mimes. I love it. I love that Joker's adjusted his face to look like a mime. And he delivers the line on the steps of City Hall that the pen is truly mightier than the sword. And they're trying to explain that he's taken over Grissom's guys and he's in charge and all this other stuff. And dude, through this whole movie, the mayor, who we haven't talked about, Mayor Borg, again, a character created for the film, Lee Wallace. Lee Wallace had done everything in Hollywood as well. They had some real veteran actors in this movie, Phil. But one of the driving things they wanted through this whole movie was the gala. This gala was a big deal. This celebration, this party, these parades and all this stuff. You think they were going to hold this thing at night? Because that's when the Joker wanted to do it. It's Gotham after all. I don't know, dude. I guess that's a very Gotham City thing to do, is to have it at night when all the bad people come out.
Yeah,
I suppose.
I guess so. Why have it in light? Who's going to show up to that?
Right. People got stuff to do during the day. Not at night, though. Yeah. The city's alive at night. The Joker lies to the people of Gotham because, he's a bad guy, kids. And basically says, hey, the gala's back on. I'm paying for it. He says he's going to dump millions of dollars on the town, of course. And again, through this film, we get another great one-liner. What can somebody tell me what kind of a world we live in where a man dresses up as a bat and steals all of my press? This town needs an enema. And then he blows the dude. That's so good. I don't know.
There are several scenes of him destroying things in this movie that are hilarious. Him smashing the TV with the boxing glove. It's still hilarious.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. And Bob reports back to him and he says, she's dating some guy named Wayne. And Joker says, she's about to trade up. And he was sitting there cutting out her photos like construction paper and stuff with scissors. It was awesome. Oh my God. The museum scene, which we referenced already, it's great, kids. It's one of the highlights of the film, obviously. Prince is playing in the background. He brings a gas mask, or sends a gas mask to Vicky's table. Joker has disfigured Alicia. We know that that's happened. And then, of course, Phil, another great one-liner. Where does he get those wonderful toys?
Yeah, I think there's something so great about Batman coming through the rooftop, and I don't know, just the sound of him smashing through that window just doesn't sound like it fits, but it's so perfect with this movie. I don't know why. Him smashing through that window and then coming down and pointing this enormous gun in Joker's face, and it splits and it shoots out the lines to both sides. It's just something about it, man. I don't care how many times I see it. Like, I'm just like, this is amazing.
So great. It's so great. And it was a moment that they ripped off in Mallrats. Kevin Smith put it in his film. And yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's ridiculous, but it's great. I'm with you. The sound effect is awesome. I loved it. I love how they just destroyed this museum, painted the statue to look like Joker, all this nonsense. And then they come up on this painting and it's like horrible. It's horrific or something. And Bob's got this huge knife. And Joker says, leave this one alone, Bob. I kind of like it. So he leaves it alone. So I like that as well. They gas the place. At this point, the Smile X is in full effect. Dude, the Smile X deal, I'm so happy they included that in this film because that's a very Joker thing to do, is to release this toxic gas that, not only kills you, but puts a smile on your face when it kills you. Dude, I'm all about that. That's a very Joker comic book thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, like I said earlier, it feels more like comic Joker when he uses the Smilex gas and he uses all of his bits from the comics.
Yeah, it's awesome. It just feels like the real deal. These are the moments here we get, Vicky with the Batman instead of Bruce Wayne. I don't think she has any clue who he is. She's trying to figure it out by looking at him in the Batmobile. They go through town. Dude, is this the best cinematic Batmobile we've ever seen?
I think that it probably is. You just can't beat how it looks the first time we see it. That scene of them going to that forest and then going to the cave for the first time. Yeah, I think it is.
It's just not very practical. It can't turn a corner without firing cable out, and so he can make the turn. It's kind of like the bat suit. You can't turn his head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it isn't very practical, but I mean, there's a lot of things in this movie that are practical.
Very true. Like the massive long barrel gun that Joker pulls out of his pants near the end. It's like long as his leg. How was he walking around like that the whole movie? Come on.
It's one of the best gags of the movie, man. It's so funny.
And then dude, he shoots down the Batwing with one shot. What's in that gun?
Yeah, man. What I swear it's one of the funniest gags in the movie because it's just like, no, you're watching this like no way this is gonna work, and then it does. It's just so it's so ridiculous. Come on, I want you to try. I want you to shoot me. Just that. I swear, when I watched that scene as a kid, I always love it of him standing there with his arms up and like all of this stuff is just blowing up around him. Not a single bullet, nothing has hit him, and he's just like, "Oh, my turn." Takes out this huge dumb gun. And shoots down a jet with it.
And dude, he is shooting right around Joker. And I'm like, first of all, are you shooting with rubber bullets or with actual ammunition? And how did you miss him?
I mean, he's just unloading machine guns, rockets, all this stuff, just unloading. Yeah. None of it hits him. Yeah. And he's just like, oh, well, let me handle this.
Yeah. Well, something done right, got to do it yourself, right? Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. But you're right. It's perfect because it's awesome and it's hilarious and I'm okay with it. So I'm not going to argue that point at all. I love it. Again, bunch of great one-liners. I have given a name to my pain, and it is Batman. Eventually, and kids, I jumped way ahead with the gala scene, but we'll get there. Bruce goes to Vicky's apartment. He's decided he's going to tell her. Alfred's encouraged her, Phil. I'll just go tell her. It'll make everything so much better if she knows you're the Batman. I don't know how you feel about that, Phil. I have an issue with that. But he tells her, well, he's going to tell her. She figures it out when Alfred lets her into the Batcave. First of all, before we get into that, what do you think about the Batcave? I've asked you about the suit, the car, the characters. What's your take on the Batcave? Is it just enough? Is it too much? What do you think?
I mean, I think it looks fine for the time, but again, it's just like that's what technology was then. I mean, can't imagine it being like this super expensive hub for technology and all this other stuff then. And that's just what the 80s imagined it would look like. I used to have a toy when I was a kid, and it was like the front half of it. It looked like Wayne Manor, and then you could flip it out, and it turned into the Batcave. And it had this it had like this little closet that you can put a Bruce Wayne figure in, and you turn it, and Batman comes out.
That's good stuff. So in Vicky's apartment, you get the same one line from both guys. Bruce comes in. It's a nice apartment, lots of space. Joker gives her the same line. I loved that. It's a nice little touch that doesn't have to mean anything, but it can mean something at the same time, which is great. I loved it, actually. That's very cool. The fact that Bruce thought, hey, I'm going to go out there and get shot or be prepared for the worst. He puts the metal serving tray in his shirt. What prevented the Joker from shooting him in the face? Do you know what I mean? What stopped that from happening?
It's like the Dumb and Dumber scene. Yeah, I wore
yes,
wore a bulletproof vest. But what if you got shot in the face?
That's a chance we were prepared to take. Yeah, says her that wasn't going to get shot at. And then, of course, Keaton delivers the line. You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts. Because Joker tells Vicky that Alicia threw herself out of a window. Oh, sure, that happened. I guess she was so physically tortured. Or he just said, I've had enough of this. Threw herself out of a window. You can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Again, another great one-liner. Then when he sees Keaton come out, he says, oh, another rooster in the hen house. Dude, I could quote this movie all day. But he wraps this up when he shoots Bruce, and he says, let me ask you something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? And he goes, what? And he says, I was asked out of all my prey. I just like the sound of it. So he shoots him. And Vicky gives that great scream, which we got to acknowledge. Vicky has a great scream. Kim Basinger does. All through this film, she has it. And then when he's laying there and he thinks he's dead, Joker goes, "Never rub another man's rhubarb," which is awesome.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about that line. I don't even know if it fits Joker, but it's just one of those lines that I always remember from the movies. You ever dance with the devil? Pale moonlight. And
Yeah,
it's like
great.
it's even weirder when he says it in the flashback, and he has like that weird, almost dubbed voice when he says it.
Yes.
It's it's like very bassy and heavy. It's like, all right,
And that actor looked just like a young Jack Nicholson, didn't he?
yeah, hey kid,
Yeah. Yeah, her kid. Yeah, the voice. All right, Phil. Comic book nerds over here, kids. Did you have a problem with them retconning the origin story? What do you think about making the Joker the guy that killed Bruce's parents?
um, it doesn't necessarily bother me, but it's definitely one of those. It's definitely one of those comic book movie things where it feels like everybody has to have a tie back to the main protagonist. I don't know why that's one of those Hollywood movie things where it's a way to make things full circle, and now it's personal because you don't get more personal than killing someone's parents. Um, and I feel like we've seen it done in so many superhero movies at some point where the main bad guy, it comes back like, yeah, by the way, I killed your parents, or yeah, by the way, I killed your master, or I killed your sensei. It
Mm.
always comes back to that in some way.
Yeah, you're right. It's like they feel the need to connect the dots. I don't think they need to, but they feel the need to. I don't know why, but yeah,
Yeah.
I had more of a problem. I had more of a problem with the Sandman being the guy that killed Uncle Ben than I did anything else. I hated that
Yeah, I
actually.
didn't like that either. I just think it's one of those things where, if you explain to somebody, well, no, Joker didn't kill Batman's parents. It was a random guy named Joe Chill, because the point is that random street crime can happen to anybody, even millionaires. And it's just like, yeah, I think that would just be lost on a lot of audiences coming to see it. Now, they did it in the Nolan movies. It was just a random guy in the Nolan movies.
Hmm.
But then even then, wasn't he tied to something else? No, he wasn't. It was like Falcone knew who he was. That's what it was. Falcone knew,
Yeah, yeah. Didn't he sick him on him? He had him do it, right?
something like that. Oh, I'm wrong
Yeah.
because no, Ra's al Ghul's plan. He was like, you think that it was a coincidence that your parents died?
Ah,
It's
that's right.
all a part of his scheme. It was all a part of the League of the League of Shadows plan.
Which I'm like, I could have took that or left it. Because like you said, and I was going to use the word beauty. I don't mean beauty, but part of the appeal of this, like you said, crime is random. It should be random. It doesn't have to be orchestrated just because it's a comic book film.
Yeah. Yeah, but they always have to find a way to, bring things full circle for these things. That's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, as we said, Alfred let Vicky in, a thing that he referenced. He called him out in part two, which I freaking loved. It's like, who let Vicky into the Batcave? And just the way he put it to him was so good. But when Bruce realizes what's going on, Alfred, I think, has the best line that he had in the entire movie when he says, because he's just standing there, where they've got the bat suit locked up in the this vault, and apparently there's just the one suit. That's fine, but he's just standing there, and Bruce sees him out of the corner of his eye and says, "Something on your mind, Alfred?" And he says, "I have no wish to fill my few remaining years grieving over the loss of old friends or their sons." Dude, best line he had of the movie, maybe one of the best lines of the movie. That to me is Alfred right there.
Yes.
Really good stuff. So, as we said earlier, now we're at the gala, kids. The gala's canceled. The Joker sets us back on. He's going to dump $20 million on the city. And dude, as he's doing this, it's kind of you kind of gets lost because you're cutting to conversation outside of the feed. But he says, "Don't worry about me. I've got enough." Isn't that awesome? That's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everything about the gala and him sitting on this throne on this float,
Oh,
the balloons that are emitting the Smilex gas are just perfect. Again, it's just all of Burton's style choices. All of his creations in this movie just look distinct. They all look like something you would only see in one of his movies. Um, yeah, it's just him doing a whole doing his whole speech. Money, money, money. Who do you trust?
Yes.
I'm here. I'm giving you money. And where's the Batman? He's at home washing his tights.
Oh, it's great. It's great. The Joker copter. We got the Joker copter in this movie.
Yes. But there's the subtext of this that still fits today is that, man, you could take a really terrible person, but the second he turns around and gives you some money, you might be all right.
Right.
Right. I don't
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
problem
exactly.
with that guy. He wants to give me money. Hey, I'm running for president. I'm racist and I'm all these other terrible things, but I'll cut your taxes. Hey, that guy's all right.
Did you have someone in particular in mind there, Phil, that you're referencing?
Yeah, that's another guy that also, paints his face weird colors and dresses poorly.
And it's got bad hair.
Has bad hair. Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, man. Now I'll never not see this. Oh,
Yeah,
but the Joker's far more entertaining.
absolutely. But yeah, man, all of this is just so great, and the fact that Batman comes in and his big high tech jet, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill this guy. He killed my parents. I'm gonna shoot him down," and he can't make the shot, but the Joker's like, I will though.
Yes. That long freaking gun. That's great. I'm with you. This is like the best. This has got to be one of the best third acts, one of the best climaxes of any comic book film because it's so freaking fun. I mean, there's so much of this movie that's fun. I saw one recent, just coincidental. I saw a recent someone reviewed this and used the word nasty. There was a lot of nasty moments in this movie. I didn't click it because I'm thinking I don't know what you could be talking about. Like, it again feels subjective, right? It all is, but I'm thinking, what's nasty about this movie? What exactly are you referencing? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I could see if you meant returns. There are a lot of like gruesome scenes in there. There's a lot of like gory stuff in there that people might not enjoy, especially some of the Penguin stuff. But I didn't get that from this movie.
Not this movie. No, me either. Yeah, the black goo coming out of Penguin's mouth in part 2 was a little ugh.
Yeah, him, biting a guy's nose off. Like, come on. Him
Right.
eating fish, raw fishes out of his bare hand. Like, there's a lot of grotesque stuff with the Penguin character.
Ridiculous. Yeah. The church scene, kids, when he's got Vicky and he goes, I got to get you to the church on time. Again, best dialogue of the whole movie. Them getting to the top, as we said, it's a big deal. It's comical. Both these guys trying to get to the top of this church. Joker's thugs, as we said, highly competent, pretty competent.
Yeah,
Phil,
my man with that big chain that comes out and starts fighting them.
Yes.
the black guy that I don't know why, for some reason, the first time I've ever seen it, I was like, why does that guy look like Danny Glover to me? I don't know.
Oh my God, he does. Yeah. Yeah. What about the fight scenes? Does Batman look competent to you? Because he wins all the fights. Obviously, eventually he wins the fights. But I mean, does it work for you? Is it too? Is it okay? What do you
I
think?
think it works because we just watched this guy crawl out of a wreck of a jet that he probably shouldn't have survived.
Yes.
And he's limping and he's bleeding. So that on that level it worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because back in the scene where she's going to the Joker's goons are going to take off his mask, and she gets their attention by snapping the flashbulb, for God's sake. And he pulls the mask back down and kips up like he's in a wrestling match, which was awesome. He totally Shawn Michaels that spot.
Yeah.
Kips up to his feet, which is very awesome. So the guy is athletic. I mean, this Bruce Wayne is in shape, for God's sake. So I don't know if he's ripped. I'm pretty sure that's a padded muscle costume we're looking at, folks.
Yeah.
But it's all good. Did you hear about the new Black Adam flick? By the way, sidebar, that they actually had to remove padding from the suit because it wouldn't fit The Rock because he's already so freaking ripped.
Nah, you don't need that big muscle suit that you had to put on Shazam.
Right.
Nope. We're talking about The Rock here.
And Zachary Levi. And Levi was in great shape, but he ain't in Rock shape.
No. We're talking about a gym rat.
God bless. Whew. No kidding. So yeah, all right, Phil. Okay. We killed the Joker. And when I saw this movie, at some point it was like, yeah, he should die. He did too much. He was a bad guy. This is fine. But then part of me said, I don't want him dead. What happens to part two? Why does he need to be dead? Why do we go through villain of the week for the movies? Why don't we just, this whole time he's been recuperating and he has a soundbite in the end of part two and they're bringing back Nicholson? I mean, I don't know, dude. Is it better that he's killed because Nicholson maybe wouldn't agree to a sequel? I mean, what do you think about the Joker being dead? Spoiler alert, kids, if we hadn't spoiled it for you. What do you think about the Joker being dead in the end of this film?
I like the idea that they get into this fight at the end of the movie where he knows that he killed his parents, but he let him live, and basically his hubris is what got him killed because he tries to get away, and he's attached this line to him to this big, massive gargoyle, and he's trying to he's trying to still climb the ladder to get on a helicopter. It's just all of it is just it is just so unfitting with his version of Joker because it's all so comical. He's trying to get on the ladder. It's like there's no way he's gonna make this work. He's got this huge gargoyle behind him that then falls off the building. And then
he's dancing around.
Yeah, and then pulls him to his death. It's just, man, everything about it. The way he falls and he does that big comical gag scream on the way down, and he's got that voiceover in his jacket that's doing.
Oh yeah,
it's just it's all great.
Dude, I was I was a teenager when this movie came out, and it was one of the first films. I actually think I used my allowance to go see this movie, and I went back 4 times to the theater to see it because I had to see it again. And the first time I saw it, I'm sitting there in denial, like he's not dead. No way is he dead. No chance is he dead. Because I thought he's just too, not brilliant, but he's too crafty. He's too. I'm like, yeah, nah, he's dead. That's a long fall. He would be, as they said in Dark Knight Returns, he'd be street pizza, maximum checkout. So, I don't know. Sometimes I look at this and I'm like, you didn't have to kill him. You could have done something else. I don't know. But again, Phil, it kind of felt like the structure of the story kind of insisted it. There was really no other end than for him to die. Once you find out he killed Bruce's parents, that's the last nail in the coffin, right? This guy kind of has to die now.
Yeah, and he kind of knows too much because at this point he could basically surmise that Bruce is Batman.
Sure.
So yeah, once you take it that far, then he's bound to die at the end of the movie.
Yeah, no doubt. And I love the bit where he says, you idiot, he said, you made me, remember? You dropped me into that vat of chemicals. That wasn't easy to get over. And don't think that I didn't try. And he's doing all that, puts on the glasses, and he says, you killed my parents. He goes, what are you talking about? I killed lots of guys' parents, which is the way he said it was so horrible.
Yeah.
But it was funny at the same time.
What are you talking about? That's the joke you tell. I say you made me. You say I made you.
That's worth the price of admission. Just that bit, because he genuinely didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't care. And he says, and Bruce says, I made you. You made me first. That was awesome because that says a lot about what those two guys were at that time. I love it.
Yeah, it's come back to that. It's just so funny, man.
I think we can agree, Phil, for the most part, this cast is pretty well dead on. I have no heartburn over anything. The Vicky Vale character, I got moments with her, but Kim Basinger in the role, I'm fine with. I think the cast holds up. I think the film holds up. It's still a classic. I'm going to always enjoy it every time. And I'll give you this as we start to take this thing home. I'm watching this film. My wife kind of passes through. She had just got home and she goes, "This Batman?" And she gives me a look as if to say, "Really?" Like that. And I was like, "Yeah, it's awesome." And she just kind of laughed at me. I said, "Look, And as she's standing there, I begin reciting dialogue with the Joker, word for word. Haven't seen this movie in years, I don't think, at this point. And it's all coming back to me. The whole movie's coming back to me. And needless to say, Phil, she didn't stick around for me to keep acting in front of her. She left the room. I don't know why. So apparently I'm no Jack Nicholson, kids, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm like, yeah, of course I'm doing this movie. It's awesome. Well, folks, there you have it. That is Batman 1989. A classic, not just for comic book nerds and fans out there, but for any of you. Go out of your way to see it. If you haven't seen it, you're doing life wrong. And if you have seen it, go see it again. Phil, what do you think, my friend? Give me your last word on Batman 1989.
I think it is the first of its kind. I think for a lot of fans, this is the thing that introduced them to the Batman character if they were not comic book fans or fans of the 60s show. And I think because of that, like, it'll always hold a special place in a lot of people's hearts, including mine. It didn't introduce me to the character, but it was just one of those things. I was a kid when it came out. I had all of the toys from this movie. I mean, I had the Batmobile, I had the jet, I had it all, just because I was just such a big fan of this movie. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't be a kid in the 90s and not be a fan of this movie and Batman.
Yeah, it holds up, folks. It does have its moments. Like Phil said earlier, it is pretty gruesome. And Phil's right. The toys were cool. A lot of this movie is really, really good. Some of it's a little campy, but it's okay because it's Batman. And I think as much as this movie did make progress for The Dark Knight in the cinematic world, it also did pay homage to the Batman 60s show in small doses. And I'm good with that. So I think this movie did a little bit of everything and served a lot of masters, if I'm being honest, which is cool. And made a lot of different kinds of fans happy from a different, walks of life, which is always good. Hard to unify a comic book fan base these days, kids. Who would have thunk it? They managed to do it here, right? Doesn't this movie have a little something for everybody?
I think that it does. You'll have some people that weren't around and didn't see what it did when it came out that say that it's overrated or it's not a good movie anymore. But again, it was one of those things where you had to be there when you didn't have anything else to relate it to. This was it. This was the Batman movie at the time.
Absolutely, because it had been years since the first Superman had come out. So yeah, like you said, this was something different for DC, a different direction, a different tone, color scheme, the whole nine, the way it's shot, the score, everything combined. And dude, this became the template for comic book movies later, we have to say, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, without this example, folks, maybe I kept referencing the MCU. Dude, if this movie fails, there's always ifs in this stuff, folks. If this movie fails, who's to say we even get to the MCU? What if comic movies are laughed off the screen from this moment on? And it never works, okay?
Yeah.
Who knows what kind of world we're living in now?
There's a huge rabbit hole you can jump down of if this movie doesn't go well, do we get the X-Men franchise? Do we get things like Marvel selling off the rights to all of these other movie companies in hopes to get what Batman was at that time? There's so many what ifs with that. If this movie doesn't do well, Marvel Studios is not a thing for sure, because a big part of superhero franchises is because this movie kicked off of, for some people, like one of the most notable superhero franchises of that decade.
Oh yeah, for sure. Great rabbit hole. Maybe we'll go down it one day on the 6M, folks. That'll be fun. But yep, there you have it, kids. Batman 1989. Hope you enjoyed. Go back and listen. Go back and watch again. Maybe one day we'll do an audio commentary for it. That'd be awesome too. Again, kids, this is a fun flick, so go back and check it out. And in the meantime, that is Batman 1989. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.